Forum. My name is John Goliatino, and I'm your host. This evening, I'm going to be talking to Ben Chianese. He's the councilman in the 6th Ward. He's going for re-election in this campaign, and he's going to be telling me about what he's done the last couple of years and what he'd like to do going forward. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, John, for having me.
You're welcome. In full disclosure to the people out there, we were both JCs together at one time.
Yes, we were past presidents.
Past presidents, right. First of all, the little background, aside from the JC background, I mean, you can add that in there, but how did you come to Danbury, or were you born in Danbury? That I don't know, you know.
Well, actually, I was born in New York, in the Bronx.
Okay, we won't hold that against you.
No, my family is an Italian background. My father came from the Arthur Avenue area, and my mother came from Morris Park area around there. And believe it or not, we came up here because of the Danbury Fair. My father and mother came up to visit. They went to the fair, and they liked the neighborhood. So a year or two later, they moved the entire family up to the west side, which was pretty quiet at the time. And since then, you know, I went to Catholic school. I went to St. Peter's. And from there, I went to Rogers Park, Danbury High School, Western Connecticut. So I was pretty much educated in Danbury.
All your education was here.
Right.
Yeah.
And pretty much after that, I work in Danbury.
You're a CPA in town.
I'm a CPA locally here in Danbury. So you know, I almost owe my whole life to Danbury. So
right.
This is my way of giving a little bit back.
And you were active in JCs for how many years?
I was active in Danbury JCs for about 10 years.
10 years, yeah. And you were a past president.
I got to the level of president, yes,
right.
That's true.
Okay. So you got some leadership training from that group.
That's what started it.
That's what started your appetite for politics, right?
Yes, once they teach you how to become a leader, and I took that out for a spin, so to speak. So from there, I went to the zoning commission in the city. I was on that for a couple of terms. And then I went to the AIC Commission, where I achieved the level of chairman for a few years. And then from that, I came on to the Common Council, and basically right now serving my 4th year as on the council.
That's 2 terms.
That's 2 terms, correct.
Right. Okay. Now, when you were on the council, what are some of the issues that you were involved with? I know there's, for any council person, there's things that they were directly involved in, maybe coming up with an ordinance, and then there's other things in general. Is there any particular area they have more concern or more involvement than others during your time, the last 4 years you've been on there?
Well, as a council member, I was pretty active. You know, I tried to attend most meetings. Besides the council meeting, which are once a month, I try to attend most of the ad hoc meetings, because that's how you get the full impact of what's going on the council level. So in addition to your own committee meetings, you also go to everything that's going on pretty much to see what's going on? Sure, because you have to. That's how you get the real meat of the council. Right. Because when you're on the dais, you really don't get as much of the detail as actually going to those ad hoc meetings. Right. So it's really important to go to those meetings and ask a lot of questions on that level. Right. Now, is there any particular ones that you're more, involved with, government affairs or education, or you you just went a little bit all of them? I try to be more well-rounded. You know, being with an accounting background, you would think I would get more with the financial ones, but I kind of stayed away from those as much, and as I went more towards the other issues, because that's what I needed to be more familiar with. So I would try to more broad with the ad hoc meetings in itself. So I really didn't concentrate on one area or another, but I did. To me, what I really looked forward to is, well, a lot of things dealing with a lot of the seniors. You know, when I was with the JCs, one of my big things as president is doing a lot of stuff with seniors. Besides, I did like the senior dance that you... I think I did the Harvest Festival. I actually chaired that, and I also did a senior picnic and other things with the seniors, because I think seniors are very important within our city, and I try to get them involved as much as I can. So were you involved with the tax reduction or abatement, what's the word for it? Tax credits for seniors and veterans? Yes, I voted for all the tax credits for the seniors and for the veterans. I also put a proposal together for the seniors to actually freeze the assessments for seniors, because we can offer as many credits as we can, but it still doesn't really necessarily reduce their overall tax burden if their assessments keep going up. So in order to prevent that is to actually freeze the assessments, and that's currently in ad hoc right now.
It's in committee?
It's in committee.
Okay, but you were one of the proposers.
I actually proposed it, correct. I proposed that almost my first term on the council.
So you've been reintroducing that each year?
Well, haven't we? I tried to, yes.
Yes, okay.
And other tax matters as well.
Sometimes things take a while, you know. It might take 4 or 5 years.
Well, there has been other senior credits that have been introduced since then.
Right.
But I think this is also very important, and if I get reelected the next term, I think I'm going to try to reintroduce that again and push for that.
Right. How about educational issues?
Well, as you know, there's been a lot of talk on the education doing with the budget crunches, you know, a lot of the economic...
I know that the mayor laid off a number of teachers, and there's a lot of people who are upset about that, and there's a thinking on one hand that, well, the kids are the future, and why you're doing that, and on the other hand, you got to sort of balance out if the taxes are choking people at the wrong time. So you can argue that up and down, but where do you stand on that, or what do you think about education in general?
Well, I think education is the background of every city. I mean, people look at the education in order to determine if they want to move to one community or the other. In my experience in Danbury, I've been talking to a lot of people, and they always look to the education of why they moved to a particular community. A lot of people look at Brookfield, Richfield, and Bethel, thinking their education system is better. And I try to convince them that Danbury is just as equal as them. But it's hard to go over that hump, given the way Danbury's large school system is compared to the smaller communities. But I keep trying to tell them that Danbury has a better educational system. We have more resources than the other school systems. And you know, I do try to do that. But over the last, on the council, as I tried to explain before, is with the budget cuts, and I don't want to say budget cuts, but the lack of increase over the future years, I think it's going to have an impact in the education system. So I think that's a very concern to me, to really look into that, see where we could look into someone's budget and try to stretch it as far as we can so we can hire more teachers. I'm a big believer of going from the bottom up. We have to fund our classrooms first and then work our way up the ladder. And when we get to the top, if funding is less, then they get less.
In other words, you're more in favor, like I am, of if you're going to cut something out, cut some of the administrators out, as opposed to the teachers and they're actually educating the kids.
That is true. I do believe that. I think we got to give the teachers what they deserve.
Right.
I know this past few months with the teachers' contract, for example, you know, I would love to give them that 4.5% increase, but given the economic times, we just couldn't afford it. Would I see that in the future? Sure. I would definitely would go with that, but I think you have to make sure that the system can support that first.
There's been a number of things that have come up over the last 4 years, and I can't believe some of the things happened. For example, the tax reduction, or whatever they called it, the tax abatement on you know, which now is a Westcon building. What did you think about that, and is there anything else like that coming down the pikes, or even have smell of anything like that coming down? Or has the mayor learned his lesson that that doesn't work? That was supposed to be luxury condos downtown by the railroad station, and now it's Westcon kids that occupy that building that's got the tax abatements.
A lot of that happened before I came on the council.
Okay.
If I was on the council, I would not have approved residential tax breaks. But since then, we did approve a tax break for a commercial piece.
Which is what it's supposed to be for.
On Casper Street. I think that worked very well.
Right.
That's what it's supposed to was meant for, tax breaks for commercial, to attract new businesses into town, where, of course, they can get new jobs into town. Unfortunately, I think the economy hurt the BRT piece, which is why he went that route. But that was never the intention. I think it did hurt the whole impact of that tax program. It opened a lot of eyes to how it worked. But I don't see that happening in the future.
Yeah, that was like that one-time deal.
I think it was a one-shot deal.
Yeah, at least we hope so. We don't have to. What do you think about these bond issues? The ability of the mayor to go into $2.5 million. I'm not sure if that's been passed or not. Or is that part of the charter revision?
That's a charter change.
So in other words, people in the November election, November 3rd, are going to be voting on giving the mayor the right to, on his own say, issue a $2.5 million bond.
Well, it's not the mayor; it's the council.
Without the...
the council still has to approve the appropriation.
The transaction.
Correct.
Okay, so that's how it works. The mayor proposes, the council disposes, but the people never vote on it. According to the charter change.
Well, the way it works now is
it's $500 million, isn't it?
It's $500,000.
Or $500,000.
Well, the problem is the interpretation how that works. It was about a year ago. The mayor proposed 3 $500,000 bonds. The mayor, according to the charter, the way we interpret the charter, it was only one $500,000 bond. The mayor interpreted it as no, it's per project. And there was a big going back and forth between the Republican caucus and the Democratic caucus on the interpretation of that.
Of the charter.
Of the charter. And that...
Did anybody take it to court?
No. No, we didn't go that level. Because to that level, the taxpayers get hurt on that. And what the mayor proposed was good. Those were good proposals, so we weren't going to argue those changes.
For that 1.5?
For the 1.5 million.
Yeah.
But that which led to the charter change to where I believe it's $1.3 million.
Okay, because I understand it was original proposal in committee was $5 million, and then they reduced it to $2.5.
I don't know the number offhand, but it's somewhere around that.
Yeah.
To where the council could approve up to $1.3 million or $1.5 million in total. It's not a per project.
As opposed to
500.
500,000 it was.
I think this is a much more clearer, and I think it'd be more beneficial because nothing costs $500,000 nowadays. For example, you take the Park Avenue roof, for example. I mean,
I heard about it this past weekend.
Yes. The original proposal for that roof is actually $1.4 million to replace the roof. A lot of that's coming from the state, so the taxpayers is only paying like $500,000 of it. But if we had to pay that whole roof ourselves, the way the bonding is, we couldn't do that without going to the taxpayers for an appropriation, which could take up to 2-3 months.
I thought they were paving it with gold, but then they said it was slate.
Well, the original roof is slate.
This original slate, and replacing slate, it is very costly. So it could very well be over $1 million.
Could be.
You know.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway. Any general issues that came up aside from those that you could talk about or you would like to talk about that were on the council? I'm trying to think of some other things that you get a lot. What are some of the things the council does? Let's get into that. For example, let's say someone wants a sewer to go by their house. What's the procedure? And then what does the council have to do with it? Well,
again, the council is the legislative branch of our city. We're equivalent to Congress and the Senate up on the federal level, or the state representative or the state senate. That's what the council actually does. We propose the rules of our city. And that can go from assessments to budgets, ordinances, resolutions. We propose, and basically the mayor disposes. And that's usually the rule of thumb what the council does. As for
some people say that the mayor proposes and the council disposes.
Well, again, we are a separate branch. We're the legislative branch. The mayor is the executive branch.
Correct.
The mayor can only propose. We have to actually approve whatever he proposes. But as your question regarding a sewer, for example...
let's say somebody wants a sewer. Isn't the procedure, unless I got it wrong, and I've been off a few years, I wasn't a council one time, if somebody writes in and says, I would like to have a sewer in my neighborhood, don't they write in to the council, and then the council sends it to committee, and then they send it for a petition process?
Well,
that's the way it used to work anyway.
I mean, we like to do a democratic process. The council could theoretically approve any sewer project in the city. I can make a motion, I'd like to approve a sewer for X street, and if the council approves it, there's a sewer. But the way it works now is what they do is we get a petition from a neighborhood,
right,
or from even a developer.
Oh, so it's got to be in a petition form.
It usually comes from that format. It could be a council member could propose it, or a neighbor could propose it, but it usually has to start from a process of someone has to make a proposal to the council. The council takes a look at it and then sends it to us for a survey. Then the engineering department takes the survey and they do the engineering study for it. And that can take up to, in the past, took up to 10 years to get this survey completed because there were so many other sewer projects ahead of it. By the time it got to their next in line, it could take up to 10 years.
It's like airplanes flying around the airport, except it takes 8 to 10 years.
Well,
because the whole process of...
The process
by the time that person sends the letter, and then you got to do the petition, and let's say there's 40 houses on the street, and you got to go around and get everybody's signature, and then you come back, and then you have some kind of certification or something, and then then it goes to the committee, and
well,
then
the petition gets done before it comes to us.
Right.
Again, like I was saying before, is once the survey portion starts, that's the length of time. It was taking up to 10 years to get this process completed, and during that time people come and they move and they're not even aware that there's even a survey process in place. And what I have done is I brought it back to them and said you have to speed up the process. And in all credit to the Public Works Department with Antonio at Arola, he sped up that process by creating different departments within itself.
Oh, so you have improved it. Okay.
It has improved.
So we're up to 5 years now?
It's a much faster process, so they claim it would be.
Right.
So where now a lot of that's done where they used to outsource it is now done in-house, which speeds up the process tremendously. And I think I just was talking to them today, they actually have 3 surveys at the same time. But normally they used to have 1 every few years. Now they have 3 proposals currently, so it's definitely has sped up the process. Once that survey actually gets done, then the survey goes back out to the neighbors on the actual costs. And they usually have about a month and a half to respond back whether or not they want to actually get assessed on the sewer. And once that occurs, it's just, it's X dollars over 20 years at the sewer bonding rate. And once that, once the mail survey comes back, the engineering department puts together a report back to the council. The council will review it, and based on that mail survey, we'll either do the assessment or not do the assessment, and depends on the number of yes responses. And I mean, I can't speak for the rest of the council, I can only speak for myself. In my thing, I think there would have to be at least a 2/3 yes for me to approve a sewer assessment for somebody, because I don't think it's fair to have someone assess the sewer when they don't want it.
Yeah, it's 51% is too much of a razor.
Well, in today's economic times, the sewer assessments I've been seeing, we're around $40,000, $45,000.
That's paid over...
It's paid over 20 years or 19, 20 years, but to some who just lost their job, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And when they have a working septic system, we're asking them a lot.
Yeah, they're paying for 2 things at the same time, in a way.
But that's what the council does. Once we get that, we'll either take a motion to accept the survey or not accept it, or we can send to an ad hoc committee and we can debate it to see if we can make that assessment work. Well, we can actually take a mail survey and break it apart. Well, this half wants it and this half don't. So we can try to reroute the sewer to where we can try to accommodate the people who do want it and try to help the people who don't. So it is a much detailed process.
Right.
It's just not a simple yes or no answer sometimes.
Now, the budget process for the city, for those that have an interest, I mean, first of all, you do have publicized a lot more publicity than there was. Comcast now broadcasts, or there is a public broadcast, right?
Well, that's one of the things.
I'm not there. I make a point and I go into those meetings like I used to.
That was one of the things the Democratic caucus was successful in doing this second term, is actually having our council meetings broadcast.
And it took a heck of a time.
It took a while.
It was in the newspaper that there was resistance.
There was some resistance.
And it was going to cost $40,000 or $50,000 to do it, or whatever the number was, and then they turned out they found they could do it for less.
It was very accommodating.
Yeah.
And I think the feedback I've gotten, it keeps people informed of how the process works. And then especially with some of the Comcast members here going to our ad hoc meetings and taping those meetings and putting them on Channel 23, is getting the people informed of our meetings, how the whole process works.
So Channel 24 and Channel 23.
Channel 23, yeah. 24 is the government channel, 23 is the Comcast channel. But with those two combined, I would have to say that almost 2/3 or more of our meetings are actually televised in some form.
So there's more awareness about what goes on. So for those out there that want to be even more aware, maybe even attend a meeting or two, how does the budget process start? I know a little bit about it, but I'm basically like you. Does the proposals start at the beginning of February, where the mayor comes up and says, well, "This is what I'd like you to start working on," and he presents packets?
To me, I think the budget process is
an ongoing thing.
It's a year-long process. I think the department heads are always conscious of their budgets,
right.
And they're probably starting to work on next year's budgets now.
Right.
At least putting a list together what they're going to need. I think it's usually in December the budget packets start going out, and they sit down.
Is it December or January?
It's usually around. This is internally where the department heads meet with the finance director.
Oh, okay.
And they start putting together their plans, and they meet with the mayor, and they come together and they form an overall plan. It's usually around March where the mayor will actually present it to the council.
So from March until May is that period where there might be Government 1, Government 2, education.
Right. The budget's broken down.
The budget's broken down into different sections.
It's broken down into components, and each component has an ad hoc committee, and they go through line item, and they go through the budget in detail.
And a member of the public could come and attend those.
The ad hocs are public meetings. They could attend those meetings. They can't ask the questions, but they could attend. And then once the budget is formalized, and there is a public hearing to the council
in April, right,
where the members of the public could speak on whether they like what they like about it, what they don't like about it, and the council hears their concerns. And then from there it goes to the council as a whole, and then we vote on it. Usually probably in the May meeting we adopt the budget. So from March, it's probably a 2-month process.
And budgets for the city have got to be balanced. It's not like the federal government or even the state government, even though the state government is supposed to be technically balanced also.
Yes.
The city and the state are required to have balanced budgets.
Correct.
As opposed to the government, which just prints more money. They got the Federal Reserve, they got a big print shop there. We don't have that here.
No, our budget the last few years have been, they've been increasing. I think this last time I voted against the budget, not because of the necessary flat funding, some of the components I was too comfortable in it. So I voted against it.
Right.
Because a lot of times, if your questions are not answered in the correct way, I will vote against that budget. And so that's what happened this time around. I asked a few questions, and the response I got was not satisfactory to me, so I voted against it. I think the other council members felt the same way and voted against it.
Yeah, there was some controversy about whether or not it was actually really in balance, or something wasn't quite done right, or
one of the things that I did not necessarily like is there was some revenue in this budget here. It was not necessarily the expenses, it's more the revenues, because the budget is balanced based on our revenue.
Right.
How much revenue is coming in, and they were balancing it with funds that we didn't have yet. and I don't think that was appropriate.
They were anticipating the revenue, but it wasn't.
Anticipated revenue,
but it wasn't there yet.
Right, but you know, with most budgets, you know, the balancing of the budget is the money coming out of the fund balance. You know, last year...
So you're basically taking money out of the savings account to balance the budget.
This year there was a $4 million coming out of the retained earnings of the fund balance that was going to fund this, to fund this budget. I believe the last fiscal year we did not use any of that fund balance. We wind up not being able to have to do that, which is all credit to the department heads for reducing their expenses. So we didn't necessarily have to do that. I think we're going to be okay in the last fiscal year where we're going to actually have a not as big a surplus, if any at all. I think we will, but I was told it would be more flat funded. This year, again, with the $4 million, it's just really a wait and see whether or not the anticipated revenue that we have will actually come in. We all hope that we don't necessarily have to use that fund balance because that is actually used for our bond rating.
Right.
And that's why the city is so healthy, because we do have a healthy fund balance.
Because, of course, people would say, you know, if we didn't do so much spending, we could have a lower fund balance. You could argue that too. You know.
Well, a lower fund balance would, you know, means, you know, either a higher mill rate, or less services. Yeah. So you really got to balance all three to come up with the best. You really can't take. You got to keep your fund at a certain level. You got to keep your mill rate at a certain level, and you got to keep your assessments at a certain level. And of course, that all equals what your expenditures are going to be.
That's true. Now, you want to talk a little bit about the campaign. I know you're out there working, but you're not going to say where you're going, and people out there know where you've been because you've been all over the 6th Ward, right?
Right. I think I want to keep. I want to stick with the issues. My biggest thing is, again, is make sure our seniors have the proper tax credits.
Right.
Open space. I think that, especially in my ward, the 6th Ward, again, when I first moved here, the 6th Ward was the jewel of our city, and that secret has been found for a lot of, and so it's a lot of the things that we used to have open space is starting to dwindle, and I think we need to start protecting a lot of our open space in our ward.
Right.
And there's a lot of still pretty big pieces left, so we have to start protecting now.
We got 30 seconds left.
And I'm going to start concentrating on that this time around to try to protect that a little more. Open space has always been a big thing of mine, especially for road improvements, and especially keeping our school, our Park Avenue school, up and functioning correctly as well.
All right. Well, they're waving goodbye to me. I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, John, for having me.
And I want to thank the viewers for tuning in to the Community Forum. Tune in next week, same time, same station, and we'll have an interesting program. Good night for now, and we'll see you then.